Welcome back to MVM. Today we're going to take a look at the game Tindaya, which is coming soon to crowdfunding. This is a cooperative or competitive game where you're playing as the native tribes of the Canary Islands, set during its period of colonization. Now, there's a number of things that you're going to have to survive in this game. Of course, I did say there was colonization. You're going to have to fight back against that. You're also going to have to provide food and water and shelter for your people in order to keep them alive. And you're going to have to worry about appeasing the two gods. These gods are Akaran and Monaiba. Of course, I'm probably pronouncing those names incorrectly. Sorry about that. Akaran is the god of the land, and Monaiba is the goddess of the sea. These gods are going to enact calamities if their needs are not met or if they are not satiated by offerings. Of course, we also do have those colonizers, the conquistadors, coming onto the island as well. These conquistadors are trying to land on the island and basically occupy the land, building forts and taking the land away from your native people, which is really not good. Now, these threats do require a sense of cooperation between players. There's that full cooperative mode, but like I said, there's also a competitive mode. However, the competitive mode still requires you to work together. You're going to have to all contribute to the offerings of the gods, and you're going to have to work together to fight off those conquistadors. If you don't, you can all lose, which is very bad for everybody. If that happens, just everyone is done, pack up the game, start over. Now, the competitive mode does gamify it a little bit by giving you points for doing certain things over the game. So there is actually a score in that competitive mode, providing that you do manage to win the scenario. You'll score up and see who won. There's also secret objectives. In addition to the public objective that everyone is trying to work towards, you'll have secret objectives that you're trying to complete as well. Now, the actual gameplay doesn't change much between the competitive and the cooperative versions. I do have the cooperative version set up here. I will note, however, the differences between the two versions as they come up, but the turn-to-turn gameplay, the goals and objectives, they're all the same no matter which of the game modes that you're currently playing. Now, I have already set up the board like I said, so let's talk about that for a second. Let me talk about your actual player setup, which represents your tribe. You're going to have two tribe boards, one that represents your actual tribe and one that represents your trade. That trade board represents the 4 different trades of the game. There's fishing, farming, pig farming, and sheep herding. Now, each one of the tribes is going to start with 2 of these trades already mastered, and that's going to be determined based on a starting card, which I'll talk about later. But you're going to see 2 of these that you can actually start upgrading over the course of the game. And you're going to see that each of the 4 has 3 potential upgrade spots. You'll have your starting version of that trade, which is basically going to let you collect resources. Then you'll have the advanced version of that trade, which is going to let you collect a better version of that resource. And then you'll have the bottom here, which is actually going to let you craft something by combining a bunch of different resources together. And like I said, each tribe is going to be better at certain trades, but you can learn more trades as the time goes. This board also serves as your action selection board. You're going to see across the top here a number of different actions you can take. You'll be placing workers up here to either activate these or develop them over the course of the game. Now, next to that, you're going to see your actual tribe board. This tribe board is going to be where you're going to store your workers and resources over the course of the game. Now, you'll notice as well, there's a little jail that's going to be where you can place conquistadors that you've kidnapped. And along the side, you're going to have places to store resource tiles that you might take off of the board over the course of the game. Now, you combine these together, and that's going to make up your player board, like I said, with those actions running across the top. Now, there are 2 different types of action cubes in the game. You're going to have access to these little square cubes, and you'll start the game with a couple of these squares. These are basically your actions. You're going to place them somewhere in one of the action spots. At the end of the round, those are going to return to your supply, and you'll be able to use them again. You're also going to have these cylinder resource cubes, which are like double actions. When you place one of these, you'll get to take that action twice in a row. However, once you use the cylinder, it's completely gone from the game. So if you want to keep getting those double actions and keep getting those bonuses, you're going to have to keep developing your player board to unlock more of those cylinders over the course of the game. Now, like I said, I do have the board already set up here in front of me. Now, no matter how many players are playing, you're going to use the same amount of water tiles, and you're going to place these water tiles out to form the basic map. It almost doesn't matter how you place these together. There's some rules to it, but it's kind of random. But you are going to notice that there are some volcanoes. You're going to have some that are dormant side face up and some that are active side face up. You'll notice that the active volcanoes have those red plumes with the smoke coming out, indicating that they are a little more dangerous. You can kind of set the difficulty of this game by determining how many active volcanoes you want to have at the start. And you can flip these tiles over from one side to the other to indicate which side of the volcano you want to be face up. And then surrounding those volcanoes, you're going to be placing tiles. There are 3 types of tiles. There are forests, mountains, and shorelines. And you're going to be building out little islands on the board by placing out a certain number of these tiles. You'll have a setup card in the game that's going to tell you how many of each tile you're going to use. So in this case, 16 forests, 8 mountains, and 10 shoreline tiles. The card is also going to tell you how many workers you start with. So in a 4-player game, you're going to start with 2 nobles and 3 regular villagers. And it's also going to tell you your starting action cubes, 2 of those squares and 1 of those cylinders for this player count. Now, there are a number of these different setup cards for player count. And yes, they do tell you how to set up the board, but on the back, they're actually going to tell you which player number starts with which trade. So based on whether you're 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, you're going to start with different trades active at the start of the game. You'll also have certain technologies for those trades already developed. Now, this is going to set you off to an asymmetric start from the other players. You're going to be better at producing certain things, at developing certain things. Now, in a cooperative game, it's important to know your strengths and weaknesses so that you can rely on other players to kind of fill in those gaps and help you out with the things that you can't produce on your own. However, in the competitive game, it's very different. You can trade with other players and you can teach your trades to other players. However, there's an element of negotiation there. So you're going to have to be working kind of wheeling and dealing a little bit to try to get the resources that you want from other players and try to spot, maybe if you're the only one learning a specific thing, you can really focus on that, and then everyone's going to have to come to you. Now, these tiles are going to come out on these volcanoes to form 8 different islands. Each island is going to have at least 1 of each of the different terrain types, and then you're going to fill in the rest of the tiles randomly to kind of build out these islands over the board. It doesn't super matter what the board looks like at the start of the game. That's just useful for seeding the board. However, the board itself is going to change dynamically due to calamities that might occur over the course of the game, and you'll see how that works. Once you've placed all the tiles down, you're going to place resource tokens on each tile to show the resources that those tiles produce. The shore produces clay, the forests produce wood, and the stone produces ore that can be used as ore, or it can actually be turned into obsidian. Now, each player is also going to start with a camp tile, basically, for their different trades. I've started with fishing and pig farming, so I'm going to be able to seed the board with these tiles. Now, I've already placed all the tiles out for all the other players, but I'm going to basically place these camps out, and it's going to determine my starting position on the board. So for example, this fishing tile has to go out on any shoreline. And once I do place it, I'm going to take the resource that a shoreline provides, which is clay. And I'll take that and you'll flip it over and it shows you how much you're going to get. In this case, 1 clay per player that's playing. So in a 4-player game, I'd get 4 clay. Now, one thing that you're not going to see in this game is any kind of resource tiles stacked up in front of you. What you actually have are these little discs of your player color. These are going to go on the player board in the box of that resource. So for example, if I'm producing 4 clay, I'm going to take 4 of these little discs and place them in the clay spot on my player board. And that's going to show that I have 4 clay to use. In addition, I can place my villagers on there. We started with 2 of the nobles and 3 villagers. Now, you can only place 1 noble, but you can place as many villagers as you want. However, you're going to have to split these up amongst all of your available camp tiles. So I still have to place my pig farm down. I'm going to place it on a forest and take that wood token. It's going to give me 1 plus the turn number or the era number in wood. That's 1 plus 1, so I'll take 2 wood there. And then I'll place my noble and, of course, my 2 leftover villagers. Now, of course, each one of these camps is going to produce something different. The fields are going to produce crops, the fisheries are going to produce fish, and the pig farms are going to produce pigs, and the sheep herds are going to, of course, produce more sheep. Now, I've got this pig farm here, and of course, this pig farm is going to start with pigs. I'm going to get to take 2 pigs from the supply and place them on that tile, indicating that I have that pig farming trade, and I have access to these pigs. Now, you might notice that I already do have some other resources on my player board. That's because I already picked my starting tribe card. Now, there are a number of these different starting tribe cards to choose from, and each one is going to give you even more of an asymmetric start to the game. Now, these are dealt out randomly, and not only are they going to give you some starting resources, they're also going to give you a unique special power that's only usable by you over the course of the entire game. Now, once you've taken your starting resources, that's all you need to set up your particular player board, but you're going to see two other areas of the game that still need to be set up. And let's talk about the wilderness board, which is over here. This wilderness board does a couple different things. For one, it's going to tell you the turn order of the game, or the turn structure. It's going to take you step by step through what you have to do every single turn. It's also going to tell you your objectives for the game. In cooperative mode, or in both modes, there's always one basic objective, which is to have more natives left on the board at the end of the game than conquistadors. Now, looking at the board to start, we only have 2 conquistadors on the board, so we're looking pretty good. We have way more natives than conquistadors. However, this will change over the course of the game. Your natives will be subject to calamities caused by the gods, potential sacrifices, or they can fall victim to raids from the conquistadors. But suffice to say, this is not as easy as it seems to keep them all alive and to keep the conquistadors at bay. But in addition to that, you're also going to place out one community goal. This is a goal that everyone has to complete. For example, this goal says you need one of every advanced resource. You'll either need 2, 3, or 4 of them for the difficulties. And there's easy, medium, or hard difficulty here. And you can set that difficulty as you wish. But this is going to come out here, and it's going to determine basically your goal for the entire game, something that you're going to have to do if you want to win. Now, in addition, in the competitive mode, there's going to be a competitive goal as well, and you're going to have these competitive cards here. Now, you're going to notice right away that everything that's competitive has a little sun marker or icon on it, and that's going to let you denote which cards belong to that competitive game mode. And these are divided into 2 types of cards, and you're going to place one of these out on each side of the board. So you're going to have 2 objectives actually to complete in that competitive game mode. Unlike cooperative, these are actually going to give you points. So they're not just goals, they're actually going to give you ways to score. You're also going to be dealt out some secret objective cards. Now, these objectives I think are handled in a really interesting way. You're going to be dealt out these secret objectives, and you're going to have a chance to look at them. And then one player at a time, you're going to actually place these cards out face down, and you're going to place markers on them. You're going to have positive or negative markers that you can place out on these cards, basically indicating whether or not you want that particular card to be worth positive or negative points at the end of the game. Now, of course, this is going to net you those points at the end of the game, so you need to be careful not only to remember what your goal was, but also to watch other players and see what they're doing. If you remember which goal was played by which player, you can see what they're doing or not doing, and you can try to mimic that in order to maximize the points that you're going to have. But you're going to have one of these out per player at the start of the game. Of course, they're secret and face down. You're also going to see a score track that runs along the outside of that board. That's where you're going to keep score for that competitive mode. Now, these discs are going to be moving a lot over the course of the game as you take actions that give you positive or negative points. And this is also going to determine player order. So in competitive game, player order always can fluctuate. In the cooperative game, you're just going to pass first player around the table. Each player is going to take a turn being first. So that is the wilderness board over here. Now, over here, we have the second board, which is Mount Tindaya, where the game gets its name from. This is the mountain where your seers are going to be communicating with you. If you look closely here at the top of the mountain, you'll see the 2 seers and their bonfire. These are Tabiaman and Tobanante. Again, might be pronouncing that wrong, but this is a mother and daughter who legend says would live on the top of the mountain and communicate prophecies from the gods. Now, they will send signals down via smoke, letting you know what calamities that the gods have in store for you. Now, this entire board is all about those calamities that can happen. There are a different number of different types of calamities, and they're determined by this deck of cards here. You're going to have a deck of cards that is age 1, age 2, and age 3. And these decks are determined by difficulty. So you have a number of age 1 cards, age 2 cards, age 3 cards. I'm using medium difficulty here. You can choose an easier play mode or a harder play mode if you want. But this is going to list out the number of disasters. And you can see in this round that there are 6 possible disasters that are coming out to affect the board. You don't know exactly what they'll be, but you know kind of in what order they'll happen potentially. Now, you can change the difficulty, like I said, but this is not the easiest game. I mean, a good cooperative game, especially a good survival game, should be challenging. The game definitely gives you a lot to master, so I would definitely suggest starting with those easy cards and then making your way up through the hardest difficulties. And when you're really feeling comfortable with the game, that's when you can tackle those advanced challenges. But they're going to be a challenge even for the most skilled players. You're going to have a lot of disasters coming out every single turn. So let's look at this level 1 card, which has 4 disasters. You'll see that there is a disaster from each god, 1 on 1 and 1 on 4. You'll have a tsunami coming in number 2, and then conquistadors on number 3. Now, knowing what's coming isn't as important as knowing how it's coming or where it's coming. Now, conquistadors are going to be placed out on the board by rolling a die. So every time you place a conquistador, so let's say we're placing the white ship, we'd roll a die. I roll a 5 here, so I find the number 5 island, and I'll place that conquistador ship on that island. Now, that's great knowing where the conquistadors are coming, but we have no idea where these natural disasters are going to happen, and we don't know what kind of calamities the gods are going to inflict. And that's where these prophecy cards are going to come in. These prophecy cards represent those smoke symbols and our ability to read those signals to figure out more information about these prophecies. Now, these prophecy cards are going to give you some information, but these calamity cards or god prophecy cards are going to flip as well to give you information. These are split up into 2 separate decks, basically. You have this board right here and this deck right here. And this is important because at the start of the game, you have a fully burning fire. You're going to get all of the information. You're going to get to flip over these god cards, and you're going to get to flip over this prophecy card and see where the prophecies are going to happen. But over the course of the game, that fire is going to go out. You're going to have to return to Mount Tindaya and relight the fire. And you're going to do that by either placing 1 or 2 discs on there by turning in resources that can burn. As long as you have 2 discs on there at the end of the round, you're going to get to see both sets of the prophecy cards during the next phase, so you'll get all of the information. However, if you only have 1 disc on there, you're only going to get to see 1 half of the puzzle. You're either going to reveal the gods' calamities, or you're going to reveal the disasters that can occur by revealing one of these cards. You're not going to get to do both. If you haven't lit the fire at all, then you're out of luck. You get no information. Now, these cards are very important because it's going to allow you to predict those disasters and interact with the board in a way to protect yourself. So you'll be able to reveal one of those cards. And like I said, at the start of the game, you do get all of the information to start with. So you're going to look at either if you're in Era 1, Era 2, or Era 3, and it's going to tell you where each of those events are going to happen for that particular era. So we can see here on this card that Monaiba is going to come out on space 5. And that card says that Acheron comes out in space 2, so we're going to take his, place it in space 2, somewhere on the volcano of space 2. And then we're going to place that tsunami token in space 1 as indicated. So now that we have these tokens on the board, we do have some advanced warning of where these disasters are going to happen. If you hadn't revealed that prophecy card at the beginning of the round, you will still reveal it. You'll flip it over at the end of the round, and these events will still happen in these spaces. The difference is you didn't know about it, so now you're caught completely unaware and unprepared. Now, the other part of the prophecy is seeing what the gods' calamities are going to be. And you'll do that by flipping over the top card of each one of these decks. And it's going to show you here, using icons, what the calamity is going to be. And of course, all of these icons are explained in the rule book. It's going to show you that, and it's also going to show you what you can do to protect yourself from that calamity. So in this example, looking at these cards, it shows that we can build walls. So as long as we come out and build walls on the board, we can actually protect our spaces from this disaster. Now, you'll see why it's really important to know what's coming, because now I can prepare, I can build those walls, I can protect my villagers, because your villagers are a limited resource. If they're ever completely eliminated from the game and there are no more villagers left, then everybody loses, the game is over. That's a bad thing. So now I know I can start building walls, and I can start evacuating the areas where that tsunami is going to hit. Now, the effect of these calamities and natural disasters is based on the wrath of the gods. And you're going to see 2 tracks here that are going to hold discs that are going to move up and down as the gods get angrier. As you don't satisfy their sacrifices, they're going to get angrier. The radius of their disasters is going to get bigger. You're going to see the different colors, the yellow, the orange, and the red. This is going to determine whether the effect is 1, 2, or possibly 3 circles of radius, which is a huge disaster. Now, at the start of the game, everybody starts in orange, but you can get them down to yellow, which is 1 space. So let's say that you've satiated the god. At the end of the round, that tsunami is going to trigger, and it's going to trigger in a radius of 1 space around it. of course, you'll see there are 2 civilizations within that radius. So this is a pending disaster for those camps. So they'll need to either evacuate or they'll need to suffer death from that tsunami. So all of this is happening during the preparation phase. This is all happening before you've even taken your first action. But it's important because knowing what's happening or what's coming is going to dictate how you spend your action points for your turn. Now, your actions are just to place these cubes across the top of your board, like I said. And the main things you're going to be doing are either going to be developing your trades or producing via your trades. So let's talk about developing first. You're going to look at your player board, you're going to pay the next cost, and you're going to gain whatever cube was there to go into your active supply, and then you're going to have access to that advanced technology. So you've developed the next level of that tech. However, you can only develop technologies or trades that you've already learned. If you don't know a trade, for example, I don't know pig farming or regular farming, and if I don't have those, I can't develop them. The only way that I can ever develop these is to take one of my nobles on the board and move it to a camp with another noble of that same type. So I could move to a farming camp and I could potentially develop farming. If I do, then I can pay the cost. I can take that cube off, and now I have learned that farming trade, and I can start developing that farming trade as well. The other thing that you can do is produce, and you're going to be producing for all the trades that you've learned, and you're going to be producing based on how many villagers you have out on those specific tiles. They're going to be able to produce whatever that tile produces, and you're going to be able to produce some of the better goods or the advanced goods by combining different resources together if you have them. Of course, each one of these boxes has an icon at the top showing you what is going to be needed to produce that particular good. So for example, when I produce fish, I produce 1 fish for every villager I have in a fishing village. I've got 2 villagers in a fishing village, so I produce 2 fish. I'm also going to earn 1 salt for every camp I have. I have 1 camp, so I gained 1 salt because I've already developed that salt technology. And then over here, I'm going to get manure for every pig farm I have. I have 1 pig farm, so I get 1 manure. Now, manure is actually pretty great. It's going to help you grow better crops, and it's also going to help you light fires. It can be used as fuel for fire. So you're going to need to collect all of the basic resources in order to eventually upgrade to those advanced versions of the resources. So you'll see here, if I had the technology to slaughter pigs, I could slaughter a pig and turn it into a meat. And if I had the one right below it, the cured meat, it just requires 1 salt and 1 meat, which I could spend, and I could make that cured meat, which is just a better resource. Now, the reason you want to do that is because the better resources will last longer. Most goods are going to expire at the end of the round, so you either eat them or lose them. However, you can keep these advanced goods so you can use them round after round or until they're all eaten. That's really important over the course of the game. Now, mastering this trade board is kind of the key to the game. Learning when to produce, putting your guys in camps where you've developed so that they can produce the most resources, and then learning how to convert those resources into the advanced resources you need, because you can make things like grains, you can make weapons, which you'll need to fight off the conquistadors, you'll need food to survive, and also you'll need to be collecting goods so that you make sure that you have enough goods at the end of the game. Now, if you can't produce some of these resources, it's okay. You can still gain these resources by bartering with other players, which means you have to move around the board and encounter other players in order to trade with them. So let's talk about that. That's the other side of the board here. This is how you're going to move around the board. It's how you're going to explore, find new shelters, reproduce, trade. All of that exploration stuff is tied to your tribal board. Now, at the beginning of the game, you can have 4 villagers out on the board at once, but if you want to keep your 5th, 6th, and 7th villager alive, you'll need to upgrade a cave. You'll need to find another cave for them to live in. Upgrading that cave is great because you can place up to 7 workers on the board, and having more workers means producing more things, it means exploring more, it means trading more, all of that. And you're going to be traveling a lot in this game. That's one of the basic actions you can take, and you can place cubes there as many times as you want to take that basic action to move around the board. Each basic action is going to give you 3 movements, and a movement basically consists of taking everyone from one tile and moving them to another tile. So for example, I could take 1 movement here, 1 movement there, and a 3rd movement here. These villagers are going to collect any resource tiles on the tiles that they land on. And you're going to take those tiles and you're going to place them over here to the side to denote that these are the tiles that you've gained this turn. Now, you can only find 6 of these tiles over the course of the game. Now, that's your limit of how much you can carry, basically. This is to stop you from just flooding the board with workers and taking every single resource that's available. Now, In a cooperative game, you don't want to do this anyway. You want to try to make sure that the resources are dealt out at least evenly so everybody has a chance to get them, because you want everyone to be able to contribute over the course of the game. And of course, another way that you'll spread out those resources is by trading, which I know I've talked about a lot, but if you're adjacent to another player, you can trade with them. You can trade your resources for their resources. And this is very important because you're going to need to take a trip to the mountain to make sacrifices to the gods. And you really want one player to be able to stop by and pick up goods from every player on their way to the mountain, instead of everyone having to go up to the mountain and drop off their own goods. Of course, in competitive mode, it's going to be a little different. There's some strategy involved there, but cooperatively, you want to try to trade resources as best as possible. Now, moving across this board is going to require moving across the water spaces and going from island to island, especially as these tsunamis occur and more water comes out. You're going to need to cross that, and you could do so by building a canoe. You've got these little canoe tokens. I actually have little wooden upgrades as well that I can use for canoes. Each one of these canoes costs 1 wood, but basically as you're trying to move across the water, you can just pay that wood to place the canoe down. Now, only nobles know how to actually sail. It requires a noble to lead the villagers across the water. So as long as there is a noble there, you can use these canoes. And you can sail any number of spaces in a straight line and then hop out. Now, the cool thing is these canoes actually stay, so other players can come in and use these canoes later. So orange just used this canoe. They just hopped out of this canoe on their turn. Green player can come into this canoe and use it to move all the way down here on their turn. Now, if you manage to drop yourself off on a mountain, that's when you're going to get to make an offering to the gods. And you'll see here 2 sets of cards that represent the offerings that the gods need. You're going to build these piles at the start of the game by placing 3 cards in each one. And you're going to see that each one has a number of triangles at the top to indicate which round numbers that those sacrifices are required. So for this card in Era 1, I need to have 1 milk per player and 1 pig per player. If this was Era 2, I would need the milk per player, the pig per player, and the meat per player. And then round 3 is all 3 of the others. Now, these cards are going to change every round, so you're not always going to be using the same card, so it's not like you're going to be looking at the same card for eras 1, 2, and 3. You're just looking at the numbers that are present, but you're going to be switching these out, so you won't know exactly what you need for the next round until it shows up and you're looking at, those triangles again. Of course, if you can go to the volcano and you can deliver the goods, then you can satiate the gods. If you don't, then their wrath meter goes up, increasing the radius of their different calamities. But if you have the goods, when you arrive on the volcano, you can deliver them. For example, if I had some cows, I could deliver these cows. I could consider that aspect of the board satiated, and I could deliver my other resources as needed. However, if you're short on resources, you can offer human sacrifices. You can actually take one of your villagers and you can place them there to meet one of the needs of the gods instead. That's not great though, because you're limiting your total number of villagers, which is one of the in-game winning conditions. However, if you've managed to encounter conquistadors over the course of the game, if you've managed to capture those conquistadors, I talked about that prison at the beginning, you can actually sacrifice those conquistadors to the gods to fulfill some of those objectives as well. Turns out that the gods are okay with human sacrifices. Carrying these conquistadors with you does allow you to sacrifice them, does give you some flexibility in collecting those resources. Now, of course, to collect these conquistadors, you're going to have to interact with them, and there's 2 ways that you can do that. You can either raid them, or you can defend against them if they raid you, which is one of the disasters that can happen. But in either one of these situations, you're going to need weapons to fight off the conquistadors. And you'll see in your player board that some of these resources have a little weapons icon next to them that denotes that these resources can be used as weapons. You can break off a sheep's antler and use that as a weapon, or you'll see that your ore can be turned into obsidian, which can be used as a spearhead, a dagger head, anything like that that's basically a weapon. Now, to raid the conquistadors, all you need to do is take a number of villagers that equals the number of conquistadors and spend an equal number of weapons. If you do, you'll get to take those conquistadors off the board and put them into your jail, capture them, and then eventually use them for sacrifices or not. I mean, however you want to use them. You could just leave them in prison for the rest of the game. It's fine. Now, over here, you're going to see these market cards. This is another thing you can interact with. You can buy potteries, which are going to hold more goods for you, or you can buy idle cards. Now, these idle cards are like action cards. They're kind of like one-time use cards that you can use to do some kind of effect during the game, and there's icons that explain all those different effects. You can also discard these idle cards out of your hand to provide a resource. That's really good when you're really tight on resources and you really need something specific. Now, dealing with this market is a free action that you could do on any time as long as you can spend the resources. Now, you will also get the chance to reproduce. Any of your camps that has 2 or more people will produce a new villager, provided that you still have some villagers to put out. Keep in mind, like I said, you can only have up to 4 on the board without having that cave. You'll need that cave to get your 5th, 6th, and 7th. Now, the animals will populate as well. If you have your sheep herds and pig farms, as long as you have 2 sheep or 2 pigs, they will continue to populate with sheep and pigs over the course of the game. And that's how you're going to keep replenishing the board, keep providing new villagers, and making sure that there are still animals to harvest. Now, you also have to be careful, though, because more villagers out means more villagers that you have to feed at the end of every round. You'll see that every villager requires 1 heart's worth of food at the end of the round, and some of these foods produce different amounts of hearts, so they can feed different amounts of villagers based on what you're giving them. So I could spend 3, then 6, here's 7, 8, or 3, 6, 7, and then ensure that I have fed everyone. Now, you'll want to use your food that's going to spoil first, because at the end of the round, your spoiled food is going to go away, and this actually makes the gods angry. It increases their wrath. They don't like to see you spoiling food, so make sure to use that first and save some of your preserved food if possible. Then at the very end of the round, you're going to trigger all of the different disasters. Now, the conquistador ships are going to raid the closest village with their conquistadors. Now, there are some ways to prevent this. You can build walls. There are certain idols that will prevent this, but if they come at you, they're going to attack. So either you're going to fend them off with weapons, in which case you put them in the prison, or they're going to take over your camp, which can be very bad for you. You also could be triggering these god cards at some point, and they're going to do whatever they say on the god cards. For example, when Aiba might be destroying any herds and canoes that are in her radius. Of course, her radius is 1 right now, so you'll look at every space that's adjacent to her, and you'll remove any herds or sheep herds that are on those spaces. Now, if her radius had been even higher, she had been more wrathful, we could have lost even more herds. It could have been really bad. But again, you're going to resolve these all in the order of the card. The last thing that you're going to resolve is those natural disasters. Now, these natural disasters are going to be that tsunami or that volcanic eruption. Now, the tsunami is going to destroy everything within its radius. It's going to flood it. So any villagers that are on their herd sheep, any tiles even, those tiles are going to be picked up and removed off of the board. Everything is going to be cleared, and you're going to see all that's left is a bunch of water in that area. Now, if she's even angrier, for example, if her radius is 2 or 3, you could see entire sections of the board going away in the blink of an eye. And you'll notice how fast you can be losing these villagers if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time during one of these disasters. And if these villagers die, they're just removed from the game. Now, anything that's on a volcano actually will survive. So if you manage to see a tsunami coming, if everybody runs up to the top of one of the volcanoes, they will survive up there. They might be abandoned, but they will survive. Now, the other thing that could happen is one of those volcanoes can erupt. If a volcano erupts, let's say this one here, it's going to have a similar effect that's going to destroy everything in its radius, but it's going to turn it all into mountains. So you're going to be surrounding that with mountain tiles. Now, you're going to be adding a ton of these new mountain tiles to the game board as needed. So, of course, we're going to be adding 1, 2, or even possibly 3 rows of these mountain tiles if the gods are wrathful enough. Of course, this is going to come with more of those stone resources that you could potentially mine. Now, you'll notice, though, that this actually can combine multiple islands together into one big island, but volcanic eruptions can be very bad. You've lost your camps. You've lost your ability to build new camps. Really, all you can do now are those sheep herds that build on mountains. You've also lost a bunch of villagers. You could be in a really bad situation if you let these volcanoes go unchecked, which is why satiating that god's wrath is so important. It's very likely that by the end of age 1, you're not going to like the way that things look on the board. You're going to be in a really tight spot. You're going to have to use the 2nd and 3rd ages to recover, which is why I said this is a survival game. Mitigating these disasters and surviving them is the goal. You'll never be able to prevent them completely. Now, you have to survive 3 eras of that with progressively more difficult challenges, and you have to survive to the end of all 3 rounds. If any one player ever loses all of their natives, then the game ends. So that element of cooperation extends through the entire game. You need to make sure that every player survives, and even in the competitive game mode, it's in your best interest to kind of help people shore up against these disasters so they don't lose their last villager. like I said, you'll all lose, even in competitive. If you manage to survive all 3 eras, then now you have a chance to win the game. And I say chance because you also have to have completed the goals up here, having more villages than conquistadors and completing whatever the community goal is for that particular game. If you've done all of that, then congratulations, you win. In a competitive version, then you're looking to see who scored the most points. You're looking at the 2 goals up here. Plus, you'll have been scoring points over the course of the game. I didn't really talk about this, but some actions make you lose points, like spoiling food. Some actions help you gain points, like making sacrifices to the gods or whatever. That's just going to be changing throughout the course of the game. But at the end, you're going to look at those cards, and then you're going to flip over all of those secret objectives, and you're going to gain or lose points based on what you have left at the end of the game for those as well. So all of these things are going to combine, and there's only going to be one winner in that competitive version of the game. However, like I said, you have to survive first. You have to get through all 3, and by the end of the 3rd age, you've got a lot of disasters. You've got 7 disasters here to survive, potentially more based on how difficulty you're playing on. So that's super important. You need to make sure that those guys are satiated. You need to make sure that those disasters are prepared for. You need to make sure that you've lit these fires, because going into the next round blind can be really bad. Not knowing where those disasters are going to happen means you can't prepare for them. There's just a lot to this game and a lot of things that you need to manage to survive. It's a very challenging, deep game. I think you're going to get some like Spirit Island vibes here with that sense of cooperation, but this is more of a Euro approach. You're playing a resource management game here where resources are scarce and cooperation is mandatory. I don't think I've played a competitive game that does still require this much cooperation. You don't want to completely mess up your opponents at the table. You want to be just doing just better enough than them to score points while they're still able to produce and contribute to the overall game state. You need them alive to trade with. You need them alive to even just to finish the game anyway. So that is Tindaya. This game is coming out soon to crowdfunding, so take a look at the crowdfunding page to see what all the final components are going to look like instead of just this prototype that I've been showing you here today. But thank you for watching today as we took a look at this game. Please leave a comment below. Let me know whether you're excited about this game or not. I'd love to hear any questions, comments that you might have about it. And as always, thank you for watching, liking, subscribing, and until we see you again, keep having fun at the table.
Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.